Hi there, this is Justin Krane, Certified Financial Planner Professional and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. Welcome to Money You Got This. So how can you really live? How? By uniting your business money, your personal money with your life and your business. Word up.
Krane Financial is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products.
Hey everyone, welcome to Money You Got This. This show is brought to you by Krane Financial Solutions. I'm Justin Krane. I'm a certified financial planner professional. I offer investment management services and act as a fractional CFO for business owners. I'm also the author of the book, Money You Got This, where I take crazy, funny life stories that really did happen to me and turn them into money lessons that you can implement on your own. I'm psyched you're listening to the show. I want to give you this free report. 3 things multimillionaires do to grow their wealth. Just go to coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. That's coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. Thanks. So anyways, today we have a great guest. His name is Carlos Hernandez. He founded Crediverso. I got to say that like 10 times. Crediverso. I feel like I speak Italian, but Spanish, we're going to have to we'll try a little bit. But before I go into your whole big bio, which you've done a lot, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to introduce you to everyone here.
Thanks, Justin. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Looking forward to talking to you.
Cool. So, Carlos, you grew up in a Mexican-American family in LA. You're an accredited attorney. You have 3 degrees from Harvard. 3. You did undergrad, you did your MBA, and then you got your JD?
That's right. It was a lot of time to spend in Boston. It's pretty cold out there.
Wow, that's huge. That's like, what is that, like 8 years at Harvard?
8 years at Harvard. So the JD on its own would be 3 years. The MBA on its own would be 2 years. When you do it as a combined program, they do it in 4 years, which I really like because it's 2 fantastic schools, 2 really great programs, and it gives you an opportunity to try out a lot of different industries in the interim.
That's awesome. You know, I went to University of Colorado at Boulder, and I feel like a little pipsqueak compared to what you've done. But you know what? I guess it's what you make of your degree and how you implement it. But I got to believe that you learned a lot of cool stuff, and maybe we'll get into that. But let me tell everybody more about you. So you're an attorney. You got 3 degrees. You started Crediverso, and your goal was to make sure that everyone has equal access to financial information, especially Latinos, right? They're left behind with the big banks, credit card companies, and they're not getting the advertising, they're not having the financial literacy and the education that you think that they need, right? So if you want to open a business and you don't know how to get a loan, Crediverso is there for you. If you've moved to the US and you don't have your credit history and you're like not sure how to navigate that, that's how you guys can help them. You want to make sure that I guess the Latino and community has access to information and advice to, I guess, level the playing field and make them just as just have the potential to succeed. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, and then we'll get into some questions.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We founded Crediverso to be an online and mobile financial products platform. So the idea behind that was to be a place where you could compare information about credit cards, about loans, about how to get a credit check, offer educational resources. The basic idea is that this is a huge population in the country. This is 60 million people, about 20% of the population. And the resources that have been traditionally provided by large financial institutions have largely left this portion of the population underserved. So we did some information gathering about the typical marketing budget, for example, that goes towards reaching Hispanic communities. And like I said, even though it's 20% of the population, the typical large financial institution only spends anywhere between 1% and 2.5% of their marketing budget on reaching these people. So what ends up happening is that the information is just not there. And now this sets aside all the additional problems of the fact that the web pages, the billboards, the advertisements, they're all in English, right? So if you don't have access to that to begin with, and then you go try to find it on your own, we are the only website that has a place where you can compare credit cards, get information on loans that's available in Spanish. And it's kind of crazy that that's still the case. But if you are having difficulty understanding what cross collateralization is in English, how the heck are you going to understand it if English isn't your first language?
For sure. So you go to Harvard, you spend 30 or 40 years there, you leave school, and you get right into this? Like, how did you wind up doing this?
So, I bounced around for a little while. What I'll do, let me give you kind of the full background. And if it starts to get boring, just let me know. The first job I had after graduation was actually more in I knew I wanted to get involved with the kind of Latino community and be involved in the Latin American space. And so my first job actually was at a hotel company. And I was heading up a group that was doing real estate development for hotels in Latin America. And it was a great job, really fun job. I was in there were weeks where I was in a different country every single day that week. And so we were
Wow.
spending time in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil. And, that's great because those are markets that I love. It was fascinating doing business across borders. And I think real estate development, kind of like the fintech space, is an area where having a background in both business and law can really be beneficial. And so that was my first job after graduation. I ended up bouncing around a little bit from there. I spent some time in a corporate law firm, spent some time in investment banking at Goldman Sachs, and then spent some time doing private equity investing as well. So throughout this whole process, sorry, go ahead if there are any
So, yeah.
questions so far as I jump in
How
there.
how long were you at each of those? Because I want people to understand the bouncing around. Like, were you not happy there? Did you just want to gain some experience in each of these? Were you looking for something that you weren't really getting? What was going on there?
No, it absolutely wasn't whether I was happy or not. I think those industries are fascinating. I think the companies that I worked for are really great places. It is a really exciting thing to be around super smart people who are pushing the envelope intellectually every single day. And so it wasn't a matter of whether I was, I think, professionally happy at these firms. I think I'd probably answer that in two ways. First is that as I was looking around these organizations and looking up to the C-suite and the senior management, I continued to find that the representation of diversity at those C-suite levels was just not there. And so I found that if we don't have a voice as a community in the boardroom, in the C-suite, then how can we be certain that the end consumers' perspectives are being looked out for? And so that was kind of one piece of it. I'd say the equally important piece is that, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandpa was a cop and he ended up founding a company that does security services, and they're still around today. They're doing great. My dad, he's went out right after graduation and he bought a television station. He raised some money and bought a television station to offer Spanish language programming, which really didn't exist in a very meaningful way at that time. So he was an entrepreneur as well. And I think I just kind of have caught the entrepreneurial bug. And
I
I,
love that.
throughout this whole process, wanted to do something on my own, wanted to found a company, and found an opportunity where not only do I think is there a great business case and a really exciting opportunity to create a large, profitable business with a lot of reach, but at the same time have a social impact in a community that I really care about.
Yeah, I mean, social impact these days. I mean, it's such a sweet spot right now. I mean, it's huge. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Impact. What does that mean to you in light of everything that's going on? Equal rights, George Floyd, just everything. How does that affect you, and what role is that playing at Crediverso?
Yeah, so I've never been much of a political guy, but it is kind of hard to turn a blind eye to everything that's going on in our country right now. And really, my approach has been that it starts with education, and if we can, as a company and as a community, offer education at all different levels, and that's the educational system in the U.S. is one thing, and I don't know if I have the skill set or background to have an impact there, but I think where I can have a background is providing information that is easily accessible, that is language accessible,
Mhm.
in a way that is easy to understand, about, like, as you said, how to get a small business loan if I'm a small business proprietor, how to get a college loan if I'm trying to pay my own way through college. Even simple things like how to take the same amount of money I'm getting every month in my paycheck, make it go farther by, getting cash back rewards on the groceries or the gas that I'm buying each month. So those are simple things, but if we can start to move the needle on the day-to-day savings and wealth building, I think we can begin to have a generational impact that will begin putting some of these communities who have been traditionally kind of left out in a better economic position.
Cool. So let's go back to you being an entrepreneur, which you are, right? And leaving corporate world and Wall Street. What was the starting point? Was Crediverso the first thing that you wanted to do? Or did you try a few other things and did they not really work, or what? Was it the first one?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting question. There were a couple what I'd call catalysts that led to the formation of this company. So there is an investment structure called a search fund that is a really popular route for post MBAs to take. And basically the idea behind a search fund is you raise a small amount of capital from a few investors, and you go out there and you start identifying industries where they are typically high profit margin industries. They are actually generally not thought of as very sexy industries. So places like heavy industrials and shipping, things like that, where you can identify a company that is underperforming but has a good infrastructure, acquire the company with the money that you raised from the investors. Typically that money is used to kind of fund what is called the search process. And when you identify a company, then those investors their initial equity investment is rolled into the opportunity to stepped up basis. So it gives people, that have a little bit extra money on the side, an opportunity to access deal flow. And then it gives the investor a way to fund this initial acquisition. When you identify that company, you try to improve operations at it, hold it for a few years, sell it. So that's the idea behind a search fund. So that's actually the way that this kind of, how I began my entrepreneurial pursuit. In the very initial phases of that, one of the first things you do is diligencing some of these industries that you've identified as interesting. And one of the first ones I found was online financial products brokerage. And as I was looking at it, I'm starting to do diligence, and I'm realizing, wait a second, none of these companies advertise to Hispanics. None of these companies have websites that are available in Spanish. This is a crowded space in the general market, but it is absolutely empty in this huge 60 million person market that is the fastest growing segment of the United States. More time on the internet, more transactions conducted on the internet. So why am I trying to identify an underperforming company and grow it into this segment? Why don't I just try doing this myself? And so that's kind of where the impetus was.
By the way, what does Crediverso mean?
So the idea behind
a combo?
that,
Is it like two words?
Yeah, it's a portmanteau of credit and universo. So credito, universo, crediverso. So the credit universe, if you will.
The credit universe. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I looked at
I like the, to me, there was a meaningful aspect behind it because a company that my dad worked at for a long time was Telemundo, which is television mundo, so television world. And This is now credit universe. I just kind of liked the poetry of that.
That's cool. So what's the business model for Crediverso? Do people go there and pay a fee to get information? Is it advertising based? Are you looking to do a combination of that? How are you guys trying to make money?
So the thing that I really am happy about with the business model that we've decided on is that we will never charge a penny to the end user. So to the person in the Hispanic community who's trying to figure out some information on what the best credit card is, if you don't have, for example, a social security number, that person will never have to pay $1 to use our site. The business model is entirely funded by the relationships we have with our partners, so the large financial institutions. So I'll kind of go through it on a vertical by vertical basis. So we're active in a few different spaces. Our first product to launch was a credit card comparison marketplace. And that is essentially structured as an affiliate marketing model. So every time a consumer goes through our platform and clicks on a link to apply for a credit card, and there's some nuance here as to whether this conversion point happens at application for the credit card, at approval for the credit card. But the bottom line is that we get a commission from the financial institution every time we send them a customer. So for the financial institution, we basically provide them customer acquisition at scale in a demographic that they've traditionally had a lot of difficulty accessing. And then for the customer, they don't pay anything. We guide them towards a financial product that is really well tailored for their needs. That's the credit card marketplace. We have a similar model for some of our other marketplaces, credit checks, ways to send money internationally, loans, et cetera.
Are they one-off affiliate payments that you get?
So the specific structure varies on the financial partner that we're talking about, and also varies on the vertical. Generally, they are one-off payments based off of the specific conversion, the specific consumer conversion. But there are a couple other structures that are used here and there. One is a revenue sharing agreement. There is a flat fee per new customer agreement. There are kind of a few different models, and we've seen we've so far seen some that we really like, some that are okay for us, things like that.
So I gotta believe that as smart as you are, you're figuring it out as you go. I mean, there's no other really way to do it, right? In terms of you try something, you see if it works, you have a hunch, you test it, you iterate and stuff like that, right?
No, that's absolutely right. I think the first probably 3 months of this was all spent on what I call flipping over rocks and seeing if there's anything there.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was a really exciting process because, as I mentioned, we're in all these different verticals, which I think for a startup company is pretty aggressive. I think there is you could take just one of our product verticals, for example, the marketplace comparing ways to send money internationally. Okay, remittances. Now, the reason for the value proposition there is that if I'm somebody who wants to send money to my family back in, I don't know, Guatemala or Mexico or wherever it is, I typically will go to one provider and they'll show me a rate. Yeah, maybe I'll compare it with one other one going on another provider, but you have to put your information in every single one of those times. And that's a pretty burdensome process. And those fee structures, they change based off foreign exchange rate. They change based off of the fee that the financial institution charges you. So from right now to 5 minutes from now, one provider could not be the cheapest one anymore. So we are creating a way, or we have created a way that lets you compare between all these different options, kind of in the same way that if you were looking for the cheapest hotel, you're not going to go to Marriott.com, Starwood.com, FourSeasons.com. You're going to go to Expedia, and you're going to compare them all together. And so that's what we provide. So to answer your question, I think as I was flipping over those rocks and finding out that there was this big open competitive landscape, it was a really exciting process. But at the same time, I now have to learn about these landscapes. And I was not a personal finance guy before this. I understood some about corporate finance, but M&A is a far cry from how to do a balance transfer on a credit card.
Yeah. So how many years have you been in with Crediverso? Has it been around?
It's been around less than a year. So the initial ideation phase started in about October of last year. We had our beta live online by about, February of this year. We've been conducting user feedback since then and have been in the process of launching some of the different products over the past month or so.
Wow. How many employees do you have versus independent contractors? I'm curious.
So the structure that we've been using so far is, I guess we made a decision early on that we wanted to get as far along in the process of having a minimum viable product live, producing revenue before pursuing a funding event. So before going out there and really knocking on the VC doors. So part of the way we did that was by allocating most of the labor spend towards independent contractors. So at this point, while we have a lot of what I would call dedicated resources on the engineering side, the design side, and some of those folks have started to come in-house fully, really the majority of our team, and we probably have about, I'd say 15 plus team members at this point, the majority are independent contractors.
So I gotta believe that you've invested part of your own money, certainly energy in this, right? To say that you have a piece of this.
Energy, Justin, is an understatement at this point. I have not been sleeping much lately. But on the money side, absolutely. So it's still 100%, equity ownership by me, the founder. And so, that will change as we go through some of this funding process.
Sure. Sure.
But that's where we are so far.
Wow. So let me just get this right. And are you married with kids?
No, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do this now.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
married, no kids.
Way easier. Way easier. Take it from me. So you've got to figure out these verticals. Then you've got to approach these institutions. Then you've got to work on some software. Then you've got to make sure that your site is right. Then you got to figure out a way that you can get eyeballs. Then you got to figure out a way to get paid one time or maybe two times. Then you got to figure out how you can keep it going. And you're at like the second inning, maybe not the first, but it seems to me that you've done a lot, and you've got a lot more to do, which seems, I don't know, exciting.
It is. And what you identified, I'd say, is probably the most difficult piece of this business model, which is that we are a two-sided marketplace. And creating a two-sided marketplace is really hard because you need to time up the supply side and the demand side. So the supply side in our case is the financial institutions, the partnerships with the credit card issuers, the lenders, the companies that facilitate cross-border payments like Western Unions and Remitleys. And so that's the supply side, right? And they don't want to be there unless you have traffic, unless you have eyeballs on the site, like you said. Sure. Now, the supply side at the same time, why would they care about going to your site if you don't have credit cards for them to look at, if you don't have ways for them to send money, if you don't have loan products for them to look at? So timing that up really has been, I'd say, the most complicated piece of this business so far. And then in terms of where we are in the innings, I think we've done a pretty good job of that so far, but the runway is really what I'm excited about because there are so many personal financial products out there, right? Beyond just loans and credit cards and ways to send money, there is insurance, tax, all these spaces that are, like I said, where the general market is a very, very crowded, competitive landscape. Once you get into this demographic, which is, again, very, very large, it becomes less so. So I'm really excited about where we still have to go.
No, that's great. I want to talk just a little bit about education, financial literacy, and all of that, which is really what you guys are providing to Hispanics. What kind of advice do you think does the Hispanic market need? What is it that you're trying to get across to them? Do you think it's anything different? Is it the same advice and same information for anyone? Or do you think the Latin market needs something special?
Justin, I get the question a lot, especially in some of the VC conversations that I've been having, which is that why doesn't Credit Karma or, pick the general market competitor, why don't they just translate their site into Spanish? Okay. And the answer is that, as you mentioned, it's really not the same type of advice that you are giving to this market. In many cases, I mean, there certainly overlap, and there, I don't want to overstate the distance between two segments of the population that are living in the same country. But I'll give you an example. Whereas a typical general market site may put out a piece of content about the best travel cards to save money or to get an upgrade at your next stay at a hotel in Paris during your Euro trip this summer. Okay. Pretty average. I've seen stuff like that. I think I saw a billboard like that go by in San Francisco today. That is probably not the most relevant piece of financial advice that will go to somebody who maybe moved to this country from Mexico a year ago. And maybe they want to see the type of credit card that you can get if you don't have a social security number, or if you don't have a credit history yet. So our content approach, and again, this is a game that is very much a content game. Content is king. Is very, very different. And, I could go on to our user interface differentiations and our approach to marketing, but I think the content is a really easy way to see that distinction.
Well, what about the advice, though? What about financial advice and financial literacy? Is it the same? Like, I mean, everyone needs to learn about money and budgeting and investing and life and all of that. Are you guys taking a specific angle on that, or are you just trying to provide information that you think is timely for your market?
So I think our approach to that has been that we want to make sure we don't fall into the trap that a lot of startups do, which is to build for yourselves, right? The type of financial advice that our founding team and our engineers and our designers might think is relevant is going to be a far cry from what our end user might think is relevant. So we actually have a guy with a clipboard going around downtown LA right now. Don't worry, he has a face mask and gloves. He's following all the procedures, and he is asking people what they want to hear about. And we have some assumptions on, okay, do you want to hear about the best secured credit cards, okay? Because secured credit cards, for example, within our target demographic are actually used at a much higher rate than they are in the general market. So he's asking people, do you want to hear about the best secured cards? Do you want to hear about cards that have no annual fee, or do you typically carry a balance on your credit card? Because if you carry a balance, then your APR is going to matter a lot more. Whereas if you don't ever carry a balance, as many people in the general market don't, then they don't care about APR, and it's the rewards and the other things that matter more. So the way we've approached that basically is through user research and trying to answer the questions that our consumers really care about.
I love that you're doing that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't research. They guess and they fail, and then they're like, oh, well, I didn't do anything. But I believe in lots of that. User feedback. I think what you're doing, sending the guy downtown, is awesome. And I'm curious what you've learned from that and what you've implemented and what you did different. And then you're probably like, oh, we sucked at this. Why were we thinking it was X? It's totally A. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of, it's the list of what I have learned that I did wrong so far and how we've tried to course correct is very, very long. So it's almost a question of what to tell you first. I think the one of the learnings that I've had, and this is something that the folks on our team with these stronger tech backgrounds have helped me out with. And we have a woman on the team, super smart. She's the founder of multicultural marketing at Google, and she has kind of helped me implement this system that is, I think, a lot more sophisticated than the approach that I was initially taking. So when we started this thing, and like I said, it was me flipping over rocks at the very beginning and trying to figure out what opportunity was there. And because of the difficulty of that two-sided marketplace, I figured we needed to take a stepped approach and tackle the lowest hanging fruit first, which was, as I identified it, the credit card marketplace. A lot easier to onboard suppliers and to get, bring on the demand side than maybe some of the other more complicated products like loans that have a heavy regulatory framework. So when I approached that, I thought, okay, let me look at what some of these other sites are doing. Let me think about how I would do it differently, and I'll send some mock-ups over to the engineers and we'll build it. That in engineering terms is pretty much the Stone Age of how to get products built. And I had no idea. I'm not a designer. Like I said, I've spent time on the law side, on the finance side, but never viewed myself as a tech guy. And so we now have this fantastic team of engineers who have spent time doing all sorts of stuff, from facial recognition software to product design to all these great things. And we've started to use this agile framework that I'm really fascinated by. So the way I describe this is it's an approach to product development that is user-centric and incorporates a much higher level of user feedback, kind of like what you were mentioning a moment ago. And I think the easiest way for me to understand it was that what I was doing was, if you use the metaphor of trying to get a car built, I basically sketched out a car, handed it to the engineers and said, build me this car. And we spent a few months going back and forth, and there were some costs associated with it. And I was pushing them, when is it ready? When is it ready? When is it ready? Finally, at the end of the day, I get my car back, and yeah, it's a car, it's good. Is it addressing every one of my user concerns? Probably not, because there were no feedback loops baked in there. And it took a long time. There were resources expended there, and I was unhappy until I got my car that whole time. Now, the inverse of that, which is what we're doing with this agile framework, is you say, okay, you want a car. Let's design a skateboard first. Then let's design a scooter, and let's launch the scooter. Then, based on the feedback that we get from the skateboard, and then the feedback that we get from the scooter, we're going to run it by user testing every single time, get user feedback. Then we're going to build a bike, and then we're going to build a motorcycle. Okay, now we've gotten to a motorcycle, and we maybe have answered every user concern that has been raised about what they needed to do, and maybe we don't need to build a car. So we've now done something in less time with fewer resources that addresses the user concerns in a much better way. And so that's kind of the approach that we've started to take now. And I think it is the engineers all look at what I did with my first car and pretty much all laugh at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, who's the guy that wrote Good to Great? Jim someone. I mean, he talks so much about looking at empirical evidence and iterating and iterating and iterating until you get something that really sticks and works, and enjoying the process. I think that's great. I'm curious, just a few questions about just your day-to-day life. Like, how are you dealing with failing? Literally, getting up every day, half of the stuff you try doesn't work, or there's a bad relationship, or you have to, because I know from my own experience and work with my clients, and really any successful entrepreneur, it's a lot of failure, and it's the ability to be resilient, withstand it, and get back up. How are you dealing with that after coming out of school, working for 3 or 4 of these companies, starting this, now having 15 people at least that work with you? How are you dealing with setbacks, and what do you do to create enough space to get back up?
That's a fantastic question. And I think let me answer it in 2 ways. So when I started this process, it was me alone in an office, right? And I was just in front of a computer and trying to find answers to questions that maybe in many cases I wasn't even certain which questions I wanted to ask. And at that point, if there is a success, it feels great because you are the only person responsible for that success, and you can bear that pride entirely on your own. But at the same time, if there's a failure, you are also the only person responsible for that failure, and that is also very heavy load to bear. So the distinction now is that, as you mentioned, we have this big team of people who are all in it together, and I think maybe this was something that shone through in the recruiting process, interviewing people, but I really believe that everybody on the team shares a concern for the social mission that we're pursuing here, on top of just the fact that it is a fun, exciting startup in the fintech space, and we're building products from the ground up, and it involves finance, it involves tech, it involves engineering, it involves legal framework. But beyond just all of that, these are people that actually do care about the mission. And so in that sense, we're all in this together. So, we had a setback earlier today where a product that we were really excited about launching within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we just found out that due to a longer onboarding process with one of the partners and some regulatory stuff we're going to have to deal with, that is going to end up taking about twice as long. But where that news surfaced was a call where I had 2 other people on the team with me on. And so I'm no longer bearing that burden on my own. That is something that we share as a team. And the end result is that we can then readjust expectations as a team, and talk through it as a team, and improvise and pivot and try to adjust our approach all as a team. So having people around that care about the mission and that are smart and you can rely on and you can share those ups and downs with, that is so much better than having to do it on your own. And I think that's really the way that I've been trying to manage some of these early failures.
So when you found out that it was going to take twice as long, what did you feel like for the first 20 seconds? Like, what was going through your mind?
I think my initial reaction is why and what can we do to make it not take that long? And so I think I rattled off probably 5 different approaches. Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And I get no, 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 no. And I think we came to a point where we'll get some more information on Monday. But with if I can throw out half of an approach and then another person on the team can throw out another piece of that approach, another person on the team can consolidate it all. And that's the benefit of having a lot of smart brains at the table. And the end result here is I think we may actually have a way to approach it piecemeal where, yes, maybe we're not going to be able to get 100% of the pie launched at the exact same time within that 4-week time window, but I think we can get a good chunk of it. And as long as we're focused on the pieces that the users care about the most, the rest, which will take the additional month or two, is almost just frosting on the cake.
So I'm hearing a little bit of grit, a little bit of patience, and a little bit of relentlessness. That's my sense.
Well, let's hope so. I hope it's coming off that way and not just, founder hubris.
That's cool. Talk to us a little bit about what you do for the first hour of every day when you wake up.
First hour of every day, I actually make a point to not check emails right when I wake up. I think a lot of what you get in the emails overnight, the ones that are sent late at night, are problems. So, hey, this didn't work, or we're stopped up here. And if you start your day off with that, I don't know. I've always felt that can put a gray taint on your day. So the first thing I do is I wake up, get something to eat, and I read the day's news. I try to get through as much of a couple different news sources that I like as possible, get a workout in, start the day.
What do you read and what do you do to work out?
So reading wise, I like the Wall Street Journal, like the Financial Times. I always try to have Bloomberg on in the background. As I said, I'm more of, I kind of like the business news, and I appreciate that those news sources pretty much, every news source has its issues, but they really do a good job of focusing just on what's going on in the markets, what's going on with companies, what are the trends that are happening. And so there's so much negativity out there that it's sometimes it's nice to just be able to focus on what's happening in the markets.
Sure.
Then in terms of workouts, well, I ran track in college and high school. And so I love running, always love running. And that's the nice thing that you can do during a pandemic is you can always run. Don't need
I know, I've gotten into running too. Yeah, that's awesome. Do you do like long distance or more like sprints or just jogging or everything or what?
Oh, as get past 30, the wheels start to fall off a little bit. So not so much sprinting is happening anymore.
Get past 30. Hello. 30. You're like, you're a little tyke.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way first thing when you wake up in the morning. But my events were always middle distance, so I was always a miler. I like those mid-distance runs.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So where can people go to learn more about your company? Is it just crediverso.com?
Crediverso.com is the easiest place, but we are also very active on social media. So you can go to Instagram at Crediverso, Facebook.com/Crediverso. The other place I'll throw out there is I'm out there on LinkedIn, so linkedin.com/CP Hernandez. And I think the reason why I mentioned that is that we do as good of a job as we can trying to get as much content out there on our sites that I think is relevant to our consumers and writes about what they care about. We have a content editorial team that has written from everything from Forbes to CNBC to all over the place. And they do a great job. And I think I'm really proud of the content that they've produced. But obviously not everything's going to be answered. And so if anybody ever has any specific questions that I can be helpful with or about how to use the platform until we get that really robust content built out in every single vertical that we're in, I'm always available on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show. We learned a lot and we wish you the best of luck.
Justin, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks again for having me. Looking forward to maybe meeting in person at some point when the pandemic era is all over.
Have a question? Want to get in touch with us? Need some help and advice with your finances? Just go to coolmoneyshow.com and reach out to us. That's coolmoneyshow.com.
Krane Financial Solutions is an SEC registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products. No investment decision should be made based solely on any information provided herein. We do not provide legal, accounting, or tax services. We recommend that all investors seek out the services of competent professionals in any of the aforementioned areas. Certain information provided has been obtained from third-party sources that we believe reliable. However, it's not been independently verified and is not guaranteed.